Take a look inside.
I mean, there's a bunch of similar stuff in another session I was going to show you from Make Me Forget, but if we've only got about 5 minutes, I think I'll throw it to you guys. What's on your mind? What questions would you like to ask? You got one there? Sorry, he just beat you.
Kick layering, how do you typically go about that?
Mostly on machine because it's quicker to flick through the different layers. I'll have a couple set up and I can quickly flick through and hear what they sound like. I'll often also then I'll duplicate pads so I can have, say, these 3 layered. I go, that's pretty cool. I'm happy with that. What else can I do? I'll go duplicate all 3, do the next lot, and then that way I can flick again between what that layer group sounded like compared to that layer group compared to that one. And I just keep referencing back to what I was always working on and try to beat the last one. And you go, that's better, that's better. That's the way I know I'm on the right track. Because sometimes, if I'm making kick layers, you get really off track sometimes and they'll phase out and you'll lose all your bottom end. My general overall tip for this is don't do it. Just find the right kick drum. But if you're doing a specific thing like that track I played earlier, we had the 2 808 kicks doing the long tone. I don't have any samples that sound like that. So I had to make it, yeah.
A lot of samples are overly compressed and they're just hard to work with, so I feel like you have to layer it.
Yeah, especially if you want something interesting and fresh and stuff, yeah. No worries.
Beforehand, you mentioned you were working in Logic for a while.
Yep.
Are racks your main reason for switching to Ableton, or what brought you over to this world?
I was writing in Ableton and mixing down in Logic for a long time because I really liked the reason I use Ableton at all is because I really like the creative process. The first part, the writing, is really quick with things like the MIDI plugins, the arpeggiators and things. The way you can route tracks into other tracks is really fast. Re-recording audio and processing, saving the racks, a bunch of things that just make the initial first part of writing the song really quick. And it was a while ago, there seemed like their summing engine wasn't quite up to par, so I didn't used to mix down in it. It wasn't until a couple of years ago, I can't remember what the update number was, but they did something to the summing engine. So I went back and tested it, and I had some tracks in Logic, and I bounced out separate stems for 2 or 3 songs, and then loaded them up the same in Ableton and Logic. Everything set at 0, no plugins, just summed them, rendered them out, and had a listen, and just couldn't pick the difference anymore. I went, okay, now I'll mix down in Ableton too. But before that, I kept using Logic really just for the mixing down, just because it was just really nice to mix down in. But for me personally, I like the songwriting part better in Ableton. You had one before.
Hey, so regarding sample origin, is that generally stuff that you're finding in sample packs or from other artists, or are you doing live recording and or going into, friends' analog studios to develop your own 808 kick or 909 snare or what have you?
I think most common, probably the first thing I'd look at, because it's faster, is sample packs. Like all the machine ones and stuff I actually use quite a bit, and other people's ones, older ones I've imported, because you can just tag their folder and go import all these kick drums, and it adds them to my kick drums and just references them. You don't have to physically copy them. I'd probably look there first. If I can't find what I want there first, I'd probably try and make it from scratch. I think would be the next thing, like by layering things and plug in sound design and stuff. Occasionally, I do like to sample from random things too, other songs. More so not really for their sounds, more for like something I'm going to change and turn into like something from a different genre. Like I might sample something off YouTube or something. A track of mine, I'll Be Okay, is full of YouTube samples. Everything pretty much is just, I just was playing around with YouTube one day and sampling everything into Machine, and wrote that track in I almost finished it in a day, just from pulling samples. It's such a fun way to work, and you're reminding me I should really do that more too. It's really just really quick.
I was thinking about, I've heard a lot of audio engineers talking about analog gear and how it's hard to get a smooth sound with just digital plugins. But now the music you're writing, it's so modern that I'm wondering, are you using plugins to get the sound that people are asking for, or do you feel like you can get the analog sound from your digital plugins?
I think you can get pretty close to an analog sound from the digital plugins if you know what you're aiming for. It really helped me when I was learning a lot of what I learned. I was working in a studio doing mix downs and production and stuff on a full outboard desk. I think it was 64 channel Audient desk. We had a K series summing bus and all SSL modified and racks of outboard gear, all the classic stuff, all the top name things you want to see, best compressors, EQs, delays, reverbs, everything. So I learned on a lot of the traditional famous gear. And then I'd go home and work on my little Pro Tools LE rig and try and pull the same sounds. And I'd be like, wow, my QEQ doesn't quite sound like the Manly, yeah. So you figure out, well, I can hear the difference. I can hear why it doesn't sound quite like it. So I'll try some subtle distortion and other things, and I'll try this other EQ and until I get the sound that's in my head that I heard when I used that good gear. And you start to remember it, and I think that definitely helped me, because then I'd realize and appreciate that sometimes if you just load the digital EQ or the digital compressor, it's not going to completely give you the result you want. You might have to add something else in to give it that other character that everyone else loves about analog. And probably the reason they love it too is that you just need to buy that one box and it gives it to you straight away. You can probably get the same result, you just got to work a little harder. If you can afford it, buy it, but I don't know, you can't bring all that on the road.
But then, I mean, the other part of the question I was thinking about was that music, the sound of music has developed as well. So, I mean, a lot of people are just using digital gear. So the sound is getting more digital and even a bit harsher, like in the treble and stuff. Do you feel like, are you adapting to that, or are you sticking to the analog sound more?
I'm just doing, I agree, the sound is getting more like that. And I think also the production style is getting more digital. I think you could have an incredible traditional analog studio, like at least of synths and drum machines and everything. You could have all the famous synths and drum machines, and it'd be hard to pull a lot of the modern sounds. You'd have to process them heavily, I think, because everyone is processing stuff so much now, and the new modeled synths can do so much more than the old ones, original analog ones could do. So I think it's a big part of it. You know, it might be more difficult. I think you'd only buy a whole lot of analog gear if you wanted to specifically write stuff that sounded like it was from back then, or you wanted to add some of that in. For me, the way I'm doing it, I'm just doing what I'm hearing in my head. I'm inspired from hearing other people play and hearing their music, and I'll hear a certain sound, or I'll get an idea for something about, wouldn't it be awesome if it did that, and I'll write notes, always writing notes about, I want to write a track that sounds like this or does that, and then whenever I've got time to write a new song, I'll flick through and go, oh yeah, I'm going to do that one.
Okay, I have more or less a two-part question. The first is, how do you know when a song is done?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, and then going along with that, since a song can go in so many directions, where do you kind of push an idea forward and aim towards that, or just maybe talk about the creative process a little bit?
Okay, I'll usually have some kind of an idea of where I want it to go when I've either started it or halfway through it or something. Like maybe it's for a certain artist I like or a label I like I want to get this track signed to that label. So I'll use whatever else they release or my feedback from talking to them as a brief for what they're looking for. That gives me an idea of what I'm aiming for. I'm like, okay, you guys are signing stuff like this right now, or if it's an artist, you're playing stuff like this. I'll find out what things they like, and then it helps me build a little checklist. I'll write those down into the to-do list is the business. I'll write down all my to-dos. Okay, it must be concise, must have vocal here, or must have slamming kick drum, something, whatever to fit the brief. And then I'll work on it until I get as close as I can. As I think of things that need to be fixed and done, finished, I'll write them all into the to-do list. And every now and then when your brain's fried of doing too much work, just take the track back to zero, press play, don't stop it, and just write in to-dos. Okay, I got to fix that. And just don't stop it. Just keep writing down the things as you hear them. If you don't get them all down, do it again until you've written down everything you think, because it changes your perspective. You're more listening like a producer rather than an engineer then. You can sit there and you step back from it, and you're just writing. And then you can look at it afterwards and go, okay, now I just got to finish all that stuff. And you just do them all and tick them off. And generally by the end of that, you can't think of anything else to do, so it's done. And that's how I usually know, there's nothing else I could do. I'm completely happy with it. There's not a single thing I hear in it anymore where I'm like, gee, I wish I went back and fixed that. The only other thing that would speed that up is time constraints. If you got a deadline, then it's got to be done.
So it's often a checklist then.
Yeah, usually, checklist, because otherwise I'll forget, and I'll listen back to it. I'll send it in, goes off to master, and it comes back, and I'll be like, oh, I forgot to do that thing. I really wanted to put this thing in there, and like, it's too much to remember. Just write it down. Like, does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody else? Yeah.
Actually, I'm kind of curious. So you've been doing the sort of live sets with Machine for a while now, and has that influenced the way you write tracks in your studio at all, in terms of arrangement and the way you build up sounds and where you drop things?
That's a good question. Yeah, it has actually. It's made me realize how simple tracks can be that you can get away with and be really effective. And maybe when I'm, again, like I've always been all about less is more, but more so it's reiterated that to me. And it's something like, you know how I was saying, like I'll pull tracks apart to play on Machine and think about them as in 16th note hits, like where do the notes lie and is it physically possible to play? I'll think about that a little bit now when I'm writing new tracks, going, I want to make it the kind of track that would be physically possible to play. Not just because I'd like to play it at some point, but also because it doesn't probably need to be any more complicated than that to get the point across. It's like kind of setting myself a little boundary so that I don't know, go too crazy, like leave some space for the track to breathe, yeah.
So it helps you keep things simple then, pretty much.
Yeah. Because again, like I was saying before, there's just too many options available to us now, and I think it's good to set some limitations. Like maybe you could set a limitation, say I have to write everything all on analog gear, or I have to write all everything on 8 tracks, or I have to do everything on just Machine. Or I think that's really good to do, and it can be a good theme for an album too. You know, like, and people love that sort of stuff, and it's just like, yeah, they did this whole thing all in analog gear, or they did this whole thing on an iPhone. You know, like. And I think it makes it more fun and easy to write too, because I remember when I was like, I don't know, little kid, 7 or 8 or something at school, and the teacher didn't feel like teaching us or something. She wanted to go do something else. She's like, see, okay, everyone's going to write a story. Just sit down and just write a story for an hour or whatever. I'm like, what am I going to write about? Just anything you want. And I was like, oh my God, anything. So it's the worst problem. Like, if I've got to give me a brief and a plan, it's fine. I'll just do it, yeah. Anybody else?
Another one. Can you talk a little bit about translatability regarding mono in a club setting? Because you have to produce in stereo, but also
yeah,
is very important.
Used to be a bigger concern than it is now, because a lot of systems were wide in mono. A lot more are wide in stereo now, the majority, and a lot more are set up way better than they used to be. Although the speaker placement is still really bad, so you might not get a complete stereo effect, but at least they won't be phasing as much. But you still need to check that your stuff isn't phasing. I was going to show you this too. On my master bus, I always run down here 2 utility plugins. One is just set as a mono plugin, that one. So whenever I turn it on or off, that monos everything, because I'm working on my headphones, so I can quickly check how my width's going, things are phasing out. The other one is a swap button to flick the sides, because when I'm panning everything, I feel like one of my ears is slightly different to the other one. And when I pan some stuff, I'll like it, and then if I swap it round, I won't like it anymore. And so I keep adjusting, like maybe like I'll scoop too much bottom end out of something and I'll think it's a good idea, but then when I swap it around and hear it with the other ear, I'm like, no, that's not right. So I think it's a good way to double check that everything's balanced on either side, and because you're not always going to be sitting in the perfect spot when you hear it. You want it to feel good from every angle. So yeah, I'll definitely make sure things aren't phasing. They feel balanced on either side. One of my good tips for stereo stuff, the stereo spreaders in the Waves CLA are awesome. Anyone who's got these, I use these a lot for whenever I need to make something stereo. They are in the vocal one, the bass one too. I mean, if I just load up the vocal one, you can just pretty much turn off all of these. I mean, you can use the other sections if you need to do something else as well, but if you just want to use the stereo enhancing, you can just adjust this last slider here, and there's 3 different types. And they push stuff super wide, but they don't phase out, and they're awesome for that. I'd probably often use a combination of that and Wave Center as well, where you can like move, I'll show you that one too. You can control how much, it's like a stereo mono kind of thing, so you can pull out the just the center channel or the sides and balance it, and you can also shift whether the low, the high frequency, or the punch is weighted more to the center or the sides. So often if I've got like synths that are taking up too much weight in the middle and I need the vocal to be there, I might push them all out to the weight of them to the sides as well, and might maybe automate it back in when they need to be there and stuff. But then, yeah, and again, always check it in mono so that it doesn't, you don't want the volume to drop down when it's in mono. It should be the same. Cool. Any other questions, Jeremy? No? All right. Thanks for having me, guys.